the people who had the most pressure on them Sunday on just the 49er sideline.
Okay.
The most pressure is on this defensive line and Kyle Shanahan.
Okay, I buy that. Not Brock Purdy, huh?
Not Brock Purdy.
Why? Quarterback. He's the quarterback, Bonte.
First home game, he got knocked out of the NFC Championship game last year through 6 plays. And you know what? Brock Purdy stepped up when he needed to on the final drive.
Okay.
That he gets a lot of credit for that. I don't think people understand how hard that is. 12 plays, 69 yards. You hit 5 different receivers on the drive. Conley, Jawan Jennings. You hit Ayuk. You hit Kittle.
It was impressive.
You hit McCaffrey. Very impressive. Shanahan was very tight in that football game. The more and more I watch it, Shanahan was off his rocker. And then on the flip side, the defensive line, I don't care what the numbers say. 5 pressures for Nick Bosa. What does your eyeballs tell you? Your eyeballs tell you that this defensive line lacked impact in last Saturday night's game against the Green Bay Packers.
They didn't have a sack.
Did not have one sack.
I can't name you. Is David Bakhtiari still playing there?
Yeah, no, he's not.
He's not even. Come on.
He's not.
I can't name you one person on that offensive line. So that no-name offensive line stuffed Chase Young,
right,
Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Randy Gregory, Eric Armstead. And Eric Armstead, I'm looking at him like hopefully that was just a rust game for him because he was off for a while. Because that run defense, Bonte, you're talking about pressure, they were getting gashed by Aaron Jones. And by the way, the Detroit Lions, to your point, they got a better running attack. Jahmyr Gibbs,
yes,
David Montgomery, that's a 1-2 punch right there. Probably one of the best in the league out of the 1-2 punch.
Their offensive line is very physical. Their running game is very well. We'll get to the numbers in just a second here about the Detroit Lions. But that defensive line, the most expensive defensive line in football, Nick Bosa, will give you $120 million guaranteed. And with that comes with the territory of being great. You can't just have, hey, he's got 7 pressures on the where there's really pressures. Are you getting to the quarterback? We heard from Baldy yesterday about the 49ers pass rush, and it just wasn't there. Chase Young, where are you at? Chase Young, you want to get paid? I mean, a lot of people was ready to pay this guy after one game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm saying, hold your horses. To me, Shanahan and his defensive line on Sunday, because if the defensive line doesn't get any pressure and they don't hold up against the run, it could be a long day for this defense. And then you're going to have to win in a shootout.
I will say, they did, when push came to shove, the last play of the game, obviously, Jordan Love throwing the interception, going across his body, a la Brett Favre, against the, the New Orleans Saints back in the NFC Championship game when he was a Minnesota Viking. That's exactly what it reminded me of. Obviously, that was in a dome. But they did make that play, force the turnover. Dre Greenlaw gets it. Sit the hell down next time, Dre. So I'll give him credit there. But that was also Jordan Love scrambling and knowing he had no faith in his kicker, and he was trying to force a cross-the-body pass in pouring rain, by the way, to his number 1 wide receiver, Christian Watson, who, by the way, didn't really do much in that one, obviously coming off a hamstring injury. So I'll give them credit there. But for the most part, like, if you don't, and Baldy said this yesterday, if you don't pressure Jared Goff, he is an elite arm talent when it comes to poise in that pocket. If you don't get pressure on him, he was dicing up that secondary. There's a couple of all-pros in that Tampa Bay secondary, too. So you have to get pressure. Jameson Williams, he can blow the top off of any defense. Jahmyr Gibbs in the passing game. Sam Laporta. They got Zach Ertz to deal with. Hey, I'm not sleeping on Zach Ertz coming off the bench.
No, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either.
That's a safety blanket for any quarterback.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't sleep on him either. So, a lot of people think it's going to come down to that. Even Herman Moore. Herman Moore, this was before your time, Spinoni.
I looked into Herman Moore yesterday. I called him yesterday because I was obviously I helped produce Steiny and Guru and Evan doing a hell of a job. But Kruger yesterday, excuse me. And I was talking to Herman. I was like, Herman, I'm looking at your numbers, man. You should be in the Hall of Fame. This guy, legit.
I know.
During the 90s?
Yeah, I know.
Jerry Rice, Chris Carter, he was putting up all-pro seasons.
Sterling Sharp.
Yeah.
No, Herman Moore and Brett Perryman were the dynamic duo for the Lions. And they also had, of course, Barry Sanders in the backfield. And Herman Moore was no joke. I mean, 6'4", 210. He was one of the best receivers in the 90s. Think about this. From 94 through 97, he had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. And then in 98, in 15 games, he had 983 yards. Herbert Moore was no joke. Here's what he said, though, because he did a lot of work in the Detroit media for a long time. Herbert Moore, on what this game will come down to on Sunday.
Can't get into a shootout because I think San Fran's defense is going to be able to hold Lions' offense at bay a little bit easier. then the Lions offense will be able to hold the San Francisco's offense at bay. But, you're down potentially one big playmaker in Samuel that could be a difference maker in this game and neutralize that a little bit more for the Lions defense. But overall, that is the biggest concern I see coming into this game, is really how does this defense stack up against the offense of San Francisco.
That is a huge key.
That's interesting to me, because I would say the opposite. If I'm Detroit, don't you want to get in a shootout with this team?
See, I would think if you're Detroit, you can win a shootout against this team. You can. Now the Niners, I think Brock Purdy will be able to have time to throw in this football game. I do believe he'll be able to hit some deep shots outside the numbers. And I think Brandon Ayuk can have a monster game against the Detroit Lions. But the Lions are capable of winning a shootout, and they're capable of controlling the clock. We think about that first Green Bay drive where they ate up damn near 8 minutes off the clock on their opening drive, and they only got 3. The Detroit Lions do convert in the red zone. And at least for the Lions, they will go for it on fourth down. If it's a 4th and 2, they're going for it. And they'll hit you with the play-action pass. They'll isolate Amon-Ra St. Brown. And there's a lot of talk about Ambry Thomas on the edge there, playing corner for the 49ers on an island. This is what you got. You don't have many options. Jason Verrett is out for the season again. All right? Sammy Womack III is on the milk carton. This is all you got, folks.
Isaiah Oliver? You don't want him?
Do you want Isaiah Oliver at his speed against this wide receiver core? Yeah, that's asking for trouble. So Ambry Thomas is just going to have to step up and play better. And they're going to have to get him help on the opposite. Steve Wilk's going to have to roll coverage, whether it's Deshaun Gibson, whether it's Logan Ryan or Jair Brown. Who knows is going to play strong safety this week. But they've got to be better on that back end. But it all starts up front again. If that front four, it started with Nick Bosa. He got paid Reggie White money. He got paid TJ Watt money. He got paid Bruce Smith money. He got paid being an all-time great. And in 4 straight playoff games, you don't have 1 sack. And what does your eyeballs tell you, folks? What does your eyeballs tell you? Is Nick Bosa having a big impact on these football games?
My eyeballs tell me it's been disappointing. It's been very disappointing from Nick Bosa. And I juxtapose that with what's going on the Detroit Lions defensive line. Yeah, they have one guy that basically everyone's heard of, Aiden Hutchinson. He's had 8 sacks in his last 4 games.
Yeah, he's on fire.
He is a big-time player.
Big game player.
Every single time I see him in prime time, he's making a sack. Whether that was opening night against Patrick Mahomes to start the season off in Kansas City, by the way. We're sleeping on that win. I know they didn't have Travis Kelce. They went in to the defending champion's house week 1 and kicked their ass. And that was a statement drive. Early in that game, Dan Campbell went for it on the 25-yard line, something ridiculous.
Right.
Set the tone for the season for them and for that team. And Aiden Hutchinson is a huge part of that. Obviously, going back to his days in Michigan, big-time player there with Jim Harbaugh, who, by the way, may be signing with the Los Angeles Chargers by the end of the day. We'll see there. We'll monitor that. That's going to be a fascinating development. But Aiden Hutchinson, if I'm Detroit, I'm putting all my eggs in that defensive line basket, and I need to come away with a turnover. Yeah. I feel much better about my guy than the San Francisco 49ers do about their guy now, Nick Bosa. And that's a problem because Nick Bosa is a DPOY.
Well, that should motivate Nick Bosa big time. And I think he'll not only just to go back to the Super Bowl, but it starts with Nick Bosa. And the reason why we're hyper-focused on Nick Bosa is because he's the big money man. When you're the big money man, and you're paid as the highest paid defensive player of all time in NFL history, we start with you, number 97, and we start with your impact. And let's face it, in the last 4 playoff games, they've been underwhelming for Nick Bosa. So it starts with him. Now, we're not going to exonerate Javon Hargrave, who received $40 million guaranteed, not to mention a $23 million signing bonus. Javon Hargrave, are you still in Philadelphia? Are you still talking to Fletcher Cox? Are you still telling people how hard the 49ers practice? Well, maybe we don't need to practice that hard because you were MIA last Saturday night. So it's not just Nick Bosa. It's Javon Hargrave. And it is Chase Young. And it is Randy Gregory.
Been on a milk cart. Randy Gregory, I haven't heard his name since the first week they got him and he got a sack?
Exactly.
Like that, I haven't heard that guy's name. And he is the guy that we all saw in Denver who wasn't doing anything. Chase Young. Yeah, he'd have some games here or there in the NFC East and the NFC least at times. But since he's come here, outside of that first week against Jacksonville when everyone was all galvanized, coming off the 3-game losing streak, the bye, obviously Jacksonville turned out to be frauds. So that game really, I don't know how much stock you put into it. And that was a long time ago. It's the playoffs, man.
It is.
Someone needs to step up. And who's it going to be outside of Nick Bosa? Because obviously he's circled. And I have a hard time putting it all on Eric Armstead because he's been dealing with an injury all this time. And that's concerning. The plantar fasciitis, that doesn't really just go away. You think about that injury, Bonte.
It lingers.
It lingers. You think about guys, and I know it's not the NBA, but you often associate with NBA players, big guys, big men in general. And Eric Armstead is a huge dude. Like Pau Gasol. That's something that lingered. Kevin Garnett. These guys, it lingers. So, and shout out the Cranberries. Do you have to let it linger? But that's something that's concerning to me. Not only are you not getting pressure, you're letting them gas you in the run. And that sets up the play action perfectly, and that's what Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for Detroit, wants to do. They want to spread you out, and they're going to dice you. And they could dink it and dunk it with the best of them. They don't mind taking 4 or 5 yards here. But what they're going to do, similar to Kyle Shanahan, they're going to get these guys in position to show off their speed. And speed kills, as we all know. Like, come on. Jahmyr Gibbs, that guy is ruthless. You saw what he did? He had one of the sickest, and I think Sam Lubman said in the chat, it was one of the slowest but sickest jukes he's ever seen in the open field against whoever that poor guy was in the Tampa Bay secondary.
That was
you want to be careful with this team.
Who was it, Dean? Was it Dean?
I think it was.
Who was it there?
It might have been Winfield. It might have been Winfield.
Might have been, dude, that juke was so bad. And it worked. It worked. So the Niners got to stop the run as well. It's not just the pass rush. It's stopping the run. Detroit will run it and run it and run it more with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. We heard Baldy yesterday. Jahmyr Gibbs is their reliever. 5 carries, 75 yards in the fourth quarter alone. All right? David Montgomery is running hard. And remember, he played at Iowa State. I think he was with Brock Purdy as well for a little bit at Iowa State. David Montgomery runs hard between the tackles. And they have a philosophy like the 49ers. They want to run the ball down your throats. And it sets them up. You know, even late in football games where they're going for it and they're passing the ball on first down to set up 2nd and 5 runs, that's what they do. They are running that football, and they want to get to 30 carries. So the defensive line against the run and pass, I believe, has the most pressure on them outside of Kyle Shanahan. And we can have the Kyle Shanahan conversation because he can't allow Dan Campbell to walk in here with Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson and outcoach him on Sunday. Shanahan has to be a lot better on Sunday than he was last Saturday.
The coaching matchup is very interesting in this one. It just, you got the big meathead, Dan Campbell, and I'm sure you've seen it all. Everyone's seen it on social all this week leading up. Obviously, he played for the New York Giants when he was. Thank you.
D's nuts.
I love D's nuts jokes. Nick Saban also really loves D's nuts jokes for some weird reason. But he played for the New York Giants back in that game. In the early 2000s in the playoffs with Jeff Garcia, the wild card game. Obviously, they're still a little bit bitter about that. They
he slammed his helmet. Dan
slammed his helmet. It flew it. Yeah. Jeremy Shockey was right next to him. Talk about that tight end room. Jeremy Shockey and Dan Campbell. So he knows all about, the ins and outs of big games as a player and now as a coach. And they don't know any better. Right? Detroit doesn't know any better.
Right.
They're not supposed to be here, Bonte. They've been lifelong losers.
Yeah, but
this is different now.
They've got a different mentality.
And they have belief.
Yeah, the history does not matter here with the Lions.
And so he's playing with house money. He's going to let D's nuts hang on the table. And you know what? If it's 4th and 1 at their midfield, they're going to go for it. If it's on their own 45, they're going to go for it. Hell, if it's 4th and goal from maybe their 4th yard line, they're going to go for it. They're going to bite kneecaps off. Is Kyle Shanahan going to counter that? Is he going to play conservative? What's he going to do in response? Because we know what Dan Campbell's going to do.
Hey, listen, I expect Brock Purdy to be on his game.